So, okay, so that's one point. And as you can see, as I said, we could talk about that for days. I could talk to you all about games you've played with heavy textual settings and how you've done it as a player and as a GM. I'd love to hear more about that. Just for 2 minutes, name one.
Oh, like a game that I played with?
That had a heavy textual setting that you guys bought into.
Oh, I mean, the biggest, most recent one, I think that my friends are huge. Dark Heresy.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, yeah.
That's like, a big game locally, by the way. Yeah.
Oh, is it? Yeah. Like, personally, I don't like the system. It frustrates me, and I never enjoy it. But the setting is wonderful, and it's something that, whenever we would, like all us play, and we're like on online on Wikipedia, like looking and finding interesting things and all of this, and it all kind of falls apart once you get into the game, because
that's a significant point, though, because that's precisely what we're trying to avoid here, right?
Right.
I mean, what's the point of coming up with all that coolness if it's not going to get expressed or experienced or validated through play itself? So, so okay, good. I mean, without going into it in more detail, it'd be really useful for you to like turn over in your mind when you say it fell apart during play. That's pretty profound. In some ways, it seems so counterintuitive. Just to pick one of the most sprawling, developed, beloved, and also contentious settings in role-playing history, Glorantha, for RuneQuest and related games. One would think that if you buy into anything in the setting to start play, that the setting will only be richer and richer through your experience of play, and that your play itself will only be more and more informed by the experiences of your character as a piece of that setting, right? That's the ideal. That's the golden ideal, especially for fantasy role-playing, right? Everybody wants their fucking Belgariad map.
Right, yeah.
And so I laugh at that, and I sort of snarl a little bit because I think of that as an anti-fantasy and a perfect example of a useless setting. I mean, the only reason the map is there is so we know where all the characters are going to go, through the course of that particular novel. But but in any case, we're talking now about a setting that we really want to make us happy that we did this. And remember how I talked about how the game promises you X, Y, and Z, and then the question is whether you actually, feel like that was honored, right?
Right.
Same thing with the setting. That's a piece of what we're talking about. So, if you, I guess, consider those issues, kind of, and realize that is a really endless box of inner boxes to keep opening as you consider it. Right? Then I want to go to the other topic that I had in mind. And this one's more mechanical, and you'll like it because I'm asking you really, really, really basic and easy and fascinating questions about your system, which is this. For a fantasy role-playing game, your diagrams are notably lacking, and I don't mean lacking in like a lapse way, like a fault lack. That's not what I mean. But your diagrams are uncharacteristically, that's the word I want, not about whether your character lives or dies. Just about any fantasy role-playing game that I would do a rules diagram for, or a system diagram for, character death would be like a big node in it. Right? And I'm not saying that's bad. It's just very, very important to recognize that that's not where your brain turns to when you said, I'm going to diagram my system.
Right.
And so it's present perhaps only in that one box that talks about resources, whether you're going to beef up your resources.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, secondarily, effectiveness, skills, being able to like stave it off. But I'm talking about when you take the arrow in the chest. Then we need to go and look at your resources. So, so if we take a look at Havoc, and you can hear the rattling perhaps on my microphone here. Mm-hmm. That's because I'm looking here at my little D12 and my little D8, my D6, and somewhere around here, my D10. You can see where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah.
And let's talk a little bit. Tell me how my guy dies.
Okay.
Now, I did go through the combat example in which the rolls all fell to the player character.
Yeah.
Right. Well, clearly, they might not. So...
Right. So pretty much, whenever you're being attacked, if we're talking about combat, because of course there's always the chance that you fall off something and just
get poisoned or something. I get that, but let's talk about the hack and slash because I'm all for it.
Yeah. So pretty much, you compare your prowess to their prowess or whatever the happens to be. It tells you which dice that you're going to roll, and then you look at the result. So you have one die representing the character and what's good for you. So defense, not being hit, that's called the hand.
Yep.
And then the other die called the demon, that's the bad consequences. So you look at the difference, and that split tells you if you're hit or not and how much damage.
Absolutely. So, I am oriented, and I have right here, reasonably competent fighting guy is suddenly confronted with somebody who I'm looking at going, oh, shit, this guy looks like he knows what he's doing. So,
so in that case, you look at the split between the skills, right? And one side, the lower side will always have a D.
We'll always have a
D6.
Right. Okay. Got it.
All right. So let's say that they're like two levels above you.
So I got a D6, and now I'm looking at my D10.
Yeah. Right. So you would roll those.
Just did, and I got hammered.
Okay. So what'd you get?
My hand is 1. Demon is 5.
Okay. So because you rolled a 1, that means they just crit you.
Right.
So you take that 5, you double it. So that's a 10 versus a 1.
Right. So I took 9. Right.
Yeah, you take 9 plus the weapon damage. Say that the guy hit you with it damage. And then you have chain armor, which is 2 points.
Right. Yeah, we're gonna do a little wiggling for the weapon type and for the armor. I get that. Let's say just for pure shits and giggles that those cancel out.
Okay.
So I've got my 9.
You take 9. Yeah. And then so you look at your grit and you see 9 damage. Where does that put you? You start at hell, of course. So that's like for a normal character, it's a threshold, 0 to 3. And the next level bruised would be 4 to 6. Next level would be 7 to 9. So you would see that you are at the very bottom of
the
beat.
I get that. Yeah.
Right. So that triggers your grit roll. And you roll what it says there. So for you, that D6 and a D10. The D10 is good for you. If you pass that check, you get hurt, but you're nothing terrible.
Again, my D10 is an 8 and the D6 is a 5, so I actually passed the roll.
Right. So that hurt, but you're not like it didn't break your arm. It didn't send you unconscious, sprawling to the floor.
However, I did take like a seriously expert hit that completely took me off my game. I am hurt, right? If we're narrating a spear thrust, I probably took it through a muscle mass, and I'm like in agony on my knees or something like that. Right. Okay.
Right. If you had failed it, then you get knocked out and you take an injury.
Right. There I am, bleeding on the ground, unable to respond. Yeah.
Right. So you can, so you're out defeated. You're out of unless somebody wakes you arcade and wake back. You're out of the fight.
Okay. Now, what I haven't heard though is the death part.
Yeah, that happens when you get all the way down to perish.
So I was 1 point away from that.
You were, let's see, you did 9, and you need 16 to die.
Oh, 16. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So 16 would have killed you.
Got it. Okay, now this is kind of interesting. If I'm seeing a couple of really interesting points.
Okay.
If armor and weapons cancel out, then taking 16 points is actually kind of hard to do. You're going to need a crit, and you're going to need a hell of a split. Right. So that's
unless someone is way better than you.
Right. But even as I say, that's what I mean. You're going to need a hell of a split. You're going to need somebody who's going to roll real high, either because their roll was amazing against your really shitty roll, or because they're just that good. But there's going to be a big split. And most likely a crit. So assuming a 1, because that doubles it, right? That's going to increase that. So what I'm saying is that the chance of it up against a fairly equal opponent under most circumstances, your chance of literally dying in a hit are quite low.
Yeah.
Okay, number 1. Then, of course, we factor in things like, well, I'm in my nightshirt and that's a battle axe. Right. There's going to be some fun things that will make sense in that context. All right, so this is kind of important. Do you see that fairly rapid and likely death would not suit your diagram very well at all? If you look at your diagrams are thematic and about what happens next.
Mm-hmm.
How can you have a what happens next if you just got killed? Right? So, therefore, dying in this game is a mechanical reality, but it is not, for lack of a better word, what's at stake in any given fight.
Right.
That's a fairly significant thing, especially for a fantasy role-playing game. Mm-hmm. It means you've stepped away from sort of the, no matter what else it is we're doing here, we are going to have a gladiatorial Mortal Kombat system in which one person will die. Right? Mm-hmm. We're just not going to do that. So it's kind of an interesting point. I do think that for grim and gritty fantasy, that death is a thing, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you validate its risk and terror, the presence of death as a reality? How do you reconcile that with the fact that we are watching characters move through time and events and thereby changing? I'm not saying that they're irreconcilable. I am saying it's not a trivial point, particularly because we're talking about people encountering your game, me included. Mm-hmm. And one of the very first things anybody's going to ask is, how do I fight and how do I not die?
Right.